Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the Infatuasian podcast. We're trying something new today. We are al fresco again, but this time we're on the sidewalk. We're recording here on Union Street, San Francisco, at one of our favorite gift shops. It's called Nico Nico Gifts here in Cow Hollow. If you know San Francisco, you know we're kind of near Lombard. It's owned by someone we met last year named Jessica An. It's a really cute store with a unique and revolving group of gifts that you can buy from all over the world. So many interesting things, from books to snacks to household items. What else you got? You got soap. We got cards.
Soap, and my favorite, it's all the Japanese furoshiki and the Korean pojagi gift wrapping.
Yeah.
So it's like sustainable, but also it's a nod to learning about the culture and the heritage of Japanese and Korean, like history, I think.
And that taps into your roots, right? You are part Japanese and part Korean.
Yes, exactly.
And if you've ever seen this gift wrapping, it's something special. I think anyone would be happy to receive a gift, no matter how big or small. A gift wrapped this way would just be something special.
Exactly, yep.
And a few weeks ago, or is it a couple months now, you built this nice little, what do you call this, parklet?
Yes, it's officially, I guess the formal way to call it is a shared spaces parklet.
Nice. And it's built in the Asian style, and it is super amazing just to look at. The construction on it is really amazing. It's sturdy, but it's also beautiful. And you made it to give local artists a place to hang out and do their thing, yeah?
Yes, so it was meant to give the Asian community of makers, musicians, artists a place that is free of charge anytime, all year round, during business hours, for them to either sell their goods and products, perform, work on their photography projects, anything.
You had mahjong lessons?
Yes, we had Sharon Zhang. She came, I think, 2 weekends ago. She released like a new zine on how to play mahjong.
Yeah.
And so she had a table out here and also inside. So we do open up the inside space, the mezzanine as well, if we need to, just so we could properly accommodate the artisan that's popping.
And if you hear right now, that is not a recording. You're listening to live music from Corner Club. They're doing a couple sets here this afternoon. We're here on a sunny Sunday afternoon on Union Street. You can hear some motorcycles going by, but it's super nice.
Yes, the weather is perfect.
And people can look on the calendar, go to Nico Nico Gifts website. What's your actual website?
It's www.shopniconico.com.
Okay, and then you can see the calendar of events, and you can also reserve it by shooting Jessica an email, and she'll get back to you. But you can see what days are open and what days are booked, but you can also see what cool things are happening down here.
Yes, we also have workshops online too.
All right, so come on down. So we're going to use the space today for something different. We're going to use it for a podcast recording.
Yay!
So we'll get to that in a minute, but let's go ahead and end with a little music from Corner Club. All right, thanks for having us today, Jessica.
Thank you, Curtis.
All right, see you later. All right, well, we moved inside, folks. It was a little too noisy outside. Here's a fun story. So I'm going to have the introduction with me and Jessica out in the street, and you'll hear the street noise and the live music. So Eddie and I tried to do it on the street, and it was pretty fun. It was adventurous. But the problem was we were also broadcasting for a live audience that was there. And so we were using a microphone, and I was recording off of a lapel mic, and there was a slight delay between the signals. So we would say something in the amplifier, and it would take a half a second to get back. So it had this crazy reverb echo thing. So we are doing it again. So welcome back, Eddie. Welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I can mimic the car sounds, too, if you want.
Oh, man, it was pretty intense. We had fire trucks. We had multiple motorcycle gangs coming by. Who knew that Union Street on a Sunday
happening
was that happening? Yeah, but we're in the office today. We're in the studio, so it's gonna sound better for you, the audience. But yeah, maybe I should add a couple car honks or some bus noises going by just for atmosphere. But thanks for doing this again with us, Eddie.
No, it's fun to do.
All right. So we are talking to Eddie. He's been an environmental justice attorney and nonprofit worker for 15 plus years now. We're a
Yes,
little over
indeed.
15. He's the executive director over at Brightline Defense. He's served as president of the San Francisco Commission on the Environment and has served on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Bay Conservation and Development Commission. All these initials. He's in the state of California's Clean Energy Hall of Fame. He got in there for his work in equity and clean energy. He's also an artist and an author, publishing his first graphic novel just recently. When was this? March or April?
April now, mid-April, April
Oh,
16th.
pretty hot off the presses still.
Yes.
And I asked you this last time, but for the audience, is it advocate or advocate?
Oh, it can be both, but advocate, I think, is a more common pronunciation. The book's title is meant to be about, the noun form of being an advocate for oneself or community, but it can also be interpreted as about advocating for, oneself as well.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's available everywhere. Well, you could get it wherever you get books, but if your local bookstore doesn't have it, let them know that you want to read it. They'll be glad to order it for you. But welcome back to the show, Eddie.
Yeah.
What do you think of that little parklet that Jessica had? That was pretty cool, though,
Oh, that
right?
was a cool spot. And the store inside was even better. I got some gifts for my nieces, and yeah, I really enjoyed being out on that corner, getting to see the world pass by.
Yeah, I think we can do a live recording there. We're just gonna have to maybe cut out maybe the broadcast part of it
Yeah.
where we're amplifying it live. But it was a cool space. It's a very cool space. So sorry, Jessica, this isn't the live version, but we tried our best, but it just didn't work out. All right, so we like to greet our guests in the Asian way. So Eddie, have you eaten yet?
It's been about 2 or 3 hours since lunch. I had a late
It's in
lunch.
between, right? We're at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon right
Yeah,
now.
indeed. Hmm.
So you got dinner plans? You got any
Yeah,
Friday night plans?
hopefully a nice night out. So we'll see where we end up, my partner and I, but hoping to have a good dinner tonight.
All right, yeah, us too. All right, can we dig into your roots a little bit?
Sure. Parents immigrated. They're from South Korea originally. The graphic memoir itself covers generations of my family. So it starts with my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather on my mother's side, how he survived the Korean War as a translator for the US Army and South Korean Army. And then it moves to my parents and how they came to UT originally for graduate school. Dad was going to
Mm-hmm.
become an engineer, my mother a pharmacist, and they ended up doing liquor stores instead in North Texas.
Huh.
So that's why I was born in Austin, grew up in Dallas,
Huh.
and then, yeah, went to college at Brown in Rhode Island, and then came out to the West
Okay.
Coast in 2005 now.
Okay. You end up in Oakland, California.
That's right. Yeah. So my first job out of college was working as an AmeriCorps member. I was an
Okay.
after-school programmer out in Oakland, Chinatown. Worked for Oakland Asian Students Educational Services. OASIS was what it was called.
Mm.
And it was essentially an after-school program that was embedded in Lincoln Elementary School. And I was teaching arts and public speaking in addition to leading homework tutorial sessions with UC Berkeley students.
Mm-hmm. And so you look across the bay, drive across the Bay Bridge, and end up in the Tenderloin.
Yeah.
At the time, it was called Hastings Law School. What's the official name now?
It's the shorter name for it is UC Law San Francisco, but
Right,
I
right.
think but its full name is UC College of the Law, comma San Francisco. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Right there in the TL.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's how it happened or if it's ironic that your offices are only a few blocks away from the actual law school. Like,
Yeah.
was living in the TL part of the process of getting into this gig you're in now?
Yeah, no, incidental at the end of the day. I had bounced all over the city. And even, prior doing the Oakland Chinatown after school programming
Mm.
work I described, I moved at least 6 times over 9 months. Like I moved a lot all over the East Bay because I was always looking for the cheapest sublet situation.
Mm.
In the city itself of San Francisco, I've moved a fair amount, lived in the Tenderloin, lived in Hayes Valley for a hot minute before it became super expensive with the tech boom that happened
Yeah.
later on, and Glen Park, and then more recently the west side of San Francisco. Like that's been my living situation, gosh, for about 12 plus years now, probably a little
Mm,
longer. So it's been a long
mm.
time since settling out into the west side.
But yeah, if you don't know San Francisco, we're talking about places that are like 3 miles apart because San
Yeah.
Francisco is so small, all the way to the west side, but it's
Yeah.
really only like 4 miles.
But the city is
But
dense. It takes a lot to traverse. It can take like
mm-hmm.
up to 45 minutes to even cross from one point of the city to
Oh,
another.
oh, I know, I know.
Yeah.
I live south of the city in Daly City, and my school Galileo is pretty much as far away as you can get, and so I
Yeah.
pass every single high school on the way to the one I actually work at. So,
Yeah. Wow.
it's only I think it's a 10-mile drive, but yeah, 45 minutes at least. All right, so you're at Brightline. Do you wanna intro Brightline to us a little bit? What's Brightline's
Yeah,
mission?
it's an environmental justice nonprofit that essentially does direct services, so the act of delivering services directly to the community. And what that means is we do things like air quality monitoring programs, a job training program, youth leadership programs in the environment. So it's all with a direct connection to what I'll term as frontline communities, communities that face like the disproportionate effects of environmental pollution. And then we do a large amount of policy work as well. And that's where, the policy research and analysis, legal skill sets, community organizing, coalition building, all those different kinds of attributes of policy advocacy come into play. So, yeah, it's been a fun thing to do. Our work really ranges in when it comes to policy. So we can work on anything from a progressive workforce development concept called local hiring. So trying to get local communities hired onto
Mm-hmm.
economic development projects or clean energy projects. Or we could do something like trying to plan equity and push for equity concerns around offshore wind, which are these large clean energy projects being proposed off the coast of California, big wind turbines that can float on the ocean and provide up to 25% of the state's power. So it just gives you a sense of the wide range of subject matter that we deal with at Brightline.
Mm-hmm. No, it's kind of neat some of the stuff that you're working on, because I work with kids in the city, and a lot of them live in Chinatown or the Tenderloin, and a lot of these kids are ones that don't have a voice. A lot of these families don't get noticed all that often, and especially about environmental issues like clean air and clean housing and electricity and stuff like that.
And partly it's a recognition that certain communities, their day-to-day existence is so hard that the environment is not the priority issue in many ways, or it doesn't get
Yeah,
articulated as even a priority issue in their lives.
yeah.
I'll give you an example. We work with a lot of what are known as SRO tenant populations. So single room occupancy buildings, SRO buildings that exist in San Francisco. These are older buildings built in the 1900s, communal facilities, so shared not just laundry, but kitchen, bathrooms. They were built for, in essence, like a very different American city than one that exists today. And what's happened is that these buildings have aged out and that essentially they serve low income to very low income tenants. And the populations that they serve are very diverse. It can be immigrant populations, aging senior populations. There's a lot of different kind of vulnerable populations, in other words, that live in these buildings. And because they don't have modern HVAC infrastructure, what ends up happening in, say, like a wildfire scenario where you have a ton of wildfire smoke settling over a city, the
Mm-hmm.
tenants of these buildings suffer the most out of anyone really in San Francisco because the buildings themselves are
Mm-hmm.
leaky. You can't filter out particulate matter as it seeps into the building itself. And then on top of that, the rooms themselves are incredibly small too because of the way they're designed. So, in other words, of course, there are environmental issues that impact their day to day, but they're really looking at it from the frame of this is the only room I can afford.
Yeah.
And that is probably, first and foremost what comes to mind. So a lot of our work is trying to articulate, reframe, and ultimately get more resources to make the living conditions alone better. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely eye-opening. If you've never heard of an SRO, even if you live in San Francisco, you may not know about SROs or these a huge part of our city are living this way. But yeah, that's really cool. And a good portion of the book is the early days when you were Brightline itself was a struggling nonprofit. It was you and a few other people to start, and you were what you called the burrito economy, where
Oh,
you're
sure.
kind of measuring things. Okay, we need a new fax machine that's you're using burritos as your guide because you're eating burritos
Yeah.
pretty much every day and stuff like that. Well, what kept you going in those early days when the income wasn't there? You had law school debts hanging over your head,
Yeah.
and San Francisco is expensive. What kept you going in those early days?
I think general optimism. I think it's important to be cheerful about work generally while doing nonprofit
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
If you start, and a lot of the book grapples with a more transactional worldview that my parents held, that
Mm-hmm.
their aspirations for me, in many ways, was go get, a good degree. It didn't really matter if it was in law or say, from being a doctor, graduating from medical school. They were more concerned with, you know, getting some kind of professional degree where then I could go on and make, money and have a very professional, stable career. And it's not a bad aspiration to have at the end of the day. I do want to emphasize that. I think what they wanted for me came from a place of love ultimately, but
Right.
it's not the path that I chose out of law school. And then the much of the book covers essentially the back and forth conversations that happened
Mm-hmm.
between myself and my parents
Yeah.
and trying to
Yeah.
articulate that work um,
Yeah.
with varying degrees of success, I'll say. But the
Sure.
burrito math reference he made was really about like, the kind of optimistic worldview I had about the work itself. And then I do think what kept me going too was a natural curiosity about people. I do really enjoy meeting new people and new communities and understanding their needs. And so I would say that's a large part of the reason why I've stayed in nonprofit work all these years.
Yeah. Oh man, talk about inflation. I think burritos are going for like $17 now.
Yeah, or $20 I even read. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's get into the book a little bit. So, drawing, never took art class, or maybe one art class in high school or something?
Yeah, one introductory course I would say in college. And,
Okay.
for myself, like if you study the art over a long period of time, it's come a long way. Even those turtle
Mm.
comics I mentioned earlier, now, gosh, 14 years ago, um, the art in those turtle comics is very different than the art today. So I am 99% self-taught as an artist, I would say. All photographic reference has helped shaped a lot of the improvement to my art, I would say. So understanding of anatomy, perspective, color, shading, etc. And then movies too, like watching a ton of movies and reading a lot of
Uh-huh.
comics over time has also helped, like even how to position the camera and frame, certain panels.
Do you remember the first comic book or first graphic novel you ever read as a kid, and did it really affect
Gosh,
you?
the biggest impression that was made, the biggest cartoonist influence for me early on was probably Bill Watterson's Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh yeah, okay.
So classic, a boy and his tiger buddy, trying to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the artistic style there was really mind blowing to me, and then the way Bill Watterson would play with panel layouts too, I was really into as well.
Yeah, I could see that a little bit.
Yeah.
Your drawings are simple, like you could skim it pretty fast. But if you take a moment and look, there's a lot going on. Like there's a lot in the background, a lot of scenery, a lot of things that may not seem important, but maybe they come up later, or they set a mood, especially if you know San Francisco.
Yeah,
So yeah, I really like your style.
thank you.
So take a look at this book, everyone. It's pretty hefty. It's not a flimsy comic book, but is it watercolor or is it pencils?
It's Copic markers. They're the alcohol-based markers, with a kind of
Ah,
flexible nib on the end.
yeah.
In fact, in the book, I describe each marker as costing, if I remember right, like 7.99, the cost of a burrito. So
Right, right.
sometimes early on, like a literal choice was made between a burrito or one of these markers to apply the color. It's drawn oversized too, so 10 inches by 15 inches, so very large, and
Hmm.
then it's shrunk down into that port. I think it's roughly like 6 inches by 9 inches is the actual size of the book.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, each page takes 20 to 30 hours to create, all in.
Really,
And then
really.
overall, this project probably took well over 5,000 hours. That's a pretty conservative estimate, actually.
Which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because when you read the book, you realize you didn't have any time. Like
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
you were running, like literally the iconic image is you in a suit running downtown. So when did this happen? After everyone's asleep, you're doing this, or
Yeah,
when are you?
for myself, like the early days of running the nonprofit were really intense, like 100, 120 hour work weeks. And when I was working that many hours, there was no time to draw. I think
Yeah,
things started to settle down, I would say more like 2018, where I started drawing the autobiographical pages. So even the rate at which I was creating those fiction comics was a lot slower than the rate I work at today. And nowadays I work probably a more manageable 50, 60 hours a week. And then if I
only.
treat, yeah, the comics as like a part-time job, 20, 30 hours a week. I can produce roughly a page a week right now.
Mm-hmm. And you're still 100% on paper.
Yes, very old school in that way. I really enjoy the feel of paper and how it responds to the pencil itself. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm showing you right now pages of
Yeah.
the comic that I've created. But I have played around with iPads and Wacom tablets and Cintiqs at this point, but nothing can beat paper at the end of the
Not,
day.
there's nothing like it. Yeah. If people want to see your art, they can actually, without buying the book, they can actually go out into the, mostly you said Richmond district. There's
Oh, yes. Uh,
there's about 10 utility boxes with panels on it. If you've ever seen these things, and inside of them are all these electronics, and they're usually gray or kind of this military green color.
yeah.
But is it the SF Art Commission, or who talked to you about getting this on the
This was
utility boxes?
originally a competition put out by AT&T, which owns those boxes. So it's mostly telecoms equipment, if I remember
Okay,
right, that's
okay.
inside them. But yeah, they did an open competition, which was about trying to get art proposals up on some boxes that they had designated as worthy of installation. So I sent them a sample image. They liked it. And then the image itself very much celebrates the neighborhood in which that art is installed. So the Richmond district includes a lot of local landmarks that are recognizable to neighborhood residents. And what they essentially did was they took my drawing, blew it up as a big sticker, and then blowtorched it onto each box. And
Mm.
it's surprisingly still around. Like I thought it wouldn't last more than a year, but it's been about 5 years since it's been installed on those boxes.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's cool. So, yeah, you could if you ever see, well, you can look up. Do you have it on your website at all, or your
I believe
Instagram?
so. There probably is an image or two floating around, and easily on Instagram too. You can always look it up at EHA. Those are my initials, Eddie Hongyeon, comics, as it sounds. So
Yeah,
all one word.
yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's really fun for those of you who are from the Bay Area. You see a little bit of Oakland, you'll see a lot of San Francisco, and it's just neat. And there's a lot of people in there, a lot of people along the way that you can follow, and there's this developing story. And one thing I thought was interesting was that sometimes we expect that everything ties up with a neat bow at the end, or there's something dramatic happens at the end. And it never really totally materializes. There's not that breakthrough moment where Brightline gets a $5 billion grant. Yeah, there's not that moment, but it's just these little moments of realization or recognition or when you're writing this book, did anyone say, "Hey, so what happens? What's the ending like?" Was that part of the thinking?
Yeah, I mean, part of the book's trajectory has been around thinking in terms of chapters organized around themes. So themes of
Mm,
generosity, themes of taking care of one's family. And one of the core questions is like, why even bother with nonprofit work if you think we live in a largely transactional world. So if everything is about
Mm,
just whatever it may be, making it in terms of sheer self-interest, what we'll put it in more philosophical terms, why even bother with nonprofit work? And part of it is showing like the accumulation of moments and how people are connected to each other, how communities are connected to each other. And I'd like to think like even the most self-involved, self-interested person recognizes there's a value in people connecting. I do think we're social at the end of the day. Like we do
yeah,
want to connect
yeah.
with each other much more beyond like whatever pile of clamshells that we're collecting for ourselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, like I wanted to create a story that hopefully is organized around those themes, that hits those emotional notes. There's no one of the things I've been talking about in various class presentations and panels about the book is there's no moment of emotional reconciliation with particularly my parents. And I do think it was important to leave it on a more ambiguous note because
Mm-hmm.
particularly with my father, who's covered in the last chapter, is undergoing through dementia, which is a very hard disease. And then my own mother, who may not understand the intricacies of the nonprofit work itself, but also it's about that messiness to some degree, and like leaving it unresolved I thought was very important. And that's nonfiction at the end of the day. Like it's not
Yeah.
ever like the clean kind of story arc we would expect out of, say, a superhero narrative. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
really want to avoid with this, is that I understand, of course, there is the conceit of having a narrator. It is a graphic memoir at the end of the day, like a very centralized, uh, kind of focused around a protagonist. But I'd like to think this book is much more than that. It's about characters like Dr. Jackson or nonprofit workers represented in the book, or the community residents that we serve. So the hope is like people get that sense and they end on that theme, the final page of the book, which is talking about, well, what's next and what's more.
Mm-hmm. One cool thing that you had just, I think, is fairly recently. You were voted artist in residence up at Charles Schultz's.
Yeah.
What do you call it? His studio, I
The
guess.
Schultz Museum, yes, and
Schultz
research
Museum.
center.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful space. I recommend people definitely check it out. So Charles Schultz worked for decades in Santa Rosa, California. He had his own studio out there. He even financed and owned an ice rink himself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that is now serving the local community there. So in other words, it's an entire campus. The museum showcases a lot of his work, as well as hosting other local artists from the Bay Area in particular to come give presentations. So I got to give a presentation on a Saturday and meet museum goers and sign books
Mm-hmm.
too. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very cool. So what's next for you? Is there going to be Advocate 2? Is there going to be a fictional book? You're up in the air?
Another 5,000 hours later.
Yeah, right.
We'll see. I do think there's a lot of enthusiasm for the book right now, which is great to
Mm-hmm.
see. And there are definitely more autobiographical stories I want to tell. It could be about my father, for instance, and how even taking care of him has been an enormously difficult balance to strike. Um, I also still love fiction at the end of the day. I could see myself
Mm-hmm.
returning to different types of fiction. Maybe the Turtle comic gets its own kind of final story arc. Part of the challenge for me is time at the end of the day, like just making
Right,
the
right.
time to create these stories. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll see what turns out. But I'm really happy just to have this one book at least. And if I go back to whatever it is, hand stapling,
Yeah.
books myself, that could be also a very happy result in the next few years as well.
All right, that's awesome. So everyone, go get a copy of Advocate. It is definitely worth the read. It's good for all ages, I think, because I showed it to my teenage daughters and they got something out of it. But also some very adult themes, some coming of age themes. It's very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Eddie, you have survived our tough questions. Are you ready for our lightning round?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, I got to change these up a little bit because we did these last time. So
No
let me
worries.
see if I can throw some
Yeah,
curveballs at
new
you.
ones. I like it.
All right. So in the book, you talk about playing poker, and you still play a little bit.
Oh, very little. I would say probably
Okay.
once a year at this rate nowadays.
Okay. So I'm not giving away any secrets here, but
Yeah.
what's your favorite garbage hand to play? Like a
Oh.
7-2. Do you have like a hand that you play no matter what, even if it's totally garbage? You'll just play it till
Yeah.
the end.
I wouldn't say it's a garbage hand, but it's not like a premium hand either. I like a Jack Queen offsuit.
Jack
So
Queen off.
yeah,
Okay.
a lot of connectors can happen. Sorry, a lot of parlance, poker parlance being used, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fun. You know what? I don't even play. I don't.
Oh, I was
I'm
gonna
the
say,
worst.
do you have one yourself? You don't.
No, I'm the worst poker player ever because I
Oh,
can't. I have no poker face. I have no. I giggle if I get a good hand. I
yeah,
giggle.
yeah.
I have so many tells. I'm a fish, if you know what that
No,
is.
no. The saying is
But
like, all you need is a chip and a chair, and you
oh
can be
man,
really
yeah,
good at poker. Yeah,
you're really good at losing poker. That's for sure. But I don't. I love watching it.
yeah.
I'm like kind of addicted to watching. There's this the YouTube channel, Hustler Casino Live.
Oh, I gotta check this out. Okay. Yeah.
And it's cash games, and these are people dropping 50,000 on a hand, sometimes
Wow.
more
Yeah.
on one hand, and they're, I want to say they're normal people, but they obviously have some money. But
Yeah.
a couple celebrities will roll in there, like you'll get some chess players like Magnus Carlsen will come in. Arden Cho drops by
Oh,
and
okay,
plays
cool,
once in a
cool.
while. So yeah, she's not very good though. Every time I watch her, she loses.
Well, to maybe tell your listeners, the book is very much a cautionary tale on gambling too.
Yeah,
Don't
we are not advocating
yeah.
$50,000 hands by any means. But all right, anyway, let's move on. I don't want to bore the audience with poker talk here. But all right, when you go to a Korean restaurant, what's your go-to order?
Oh, I mean, it depends on the type of Korean restaurant, right?
Yeah, yeah.
More recently, I've been really into naengmyeon. This is like the cold noodle dish that's
Hmm.
created. It's cold buckwheat noodles.
Yeah.
And there are different variations on it too. But you can get it at most barbecue restaurants. Like they'll serve it as an
Huh.
accompaniment to the
Yeah.
barbecue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I a lot to choose from. Do you have a favorite yourself?
You know what? If they have it on the menu, I'll go corn cheese.
Oh, okay. Yes.
It's like the
Kind
weirdest
of
thing.
fun side dish. Yeah, yeah. Or
Yeah, it's
filler
it's like the
appetizer.
weirdest thing. You don't think of that as Korean at all, but if they have it on the menu,
Yeah.
I'll go some corn cheese. All right. So, do you have a favorite thing to say in Korean?
Oh, um, 노력해자. It just means like let's try hard.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that in Korean drama. I don't speak Korean, but I've heard that in dramas. Where like, let's do well today, guys. All
There's another Converse
right.
phrase I like, piting. Yeah, so it's like,
Fighting.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I love that one too. All right, so you've been traveling around the world a little bit and seeing different projects. What's the coolest project that you've seen lately around the world, environmentally speaking?
Gosh, I did go to Denmark and Scotland to go look at offshore wind turbines. And these, again, are wind turbines out on the ocean that generate a ton of
Mm,
power.
mm-hmm,
The Scotland trip, which is actually covered briefly in the book, you get on a
mm-hmm.
boat and you go out to sea to see these things. And then the Denmark trip was you get inside a helicopter and then you go to a nearby accommodations platform to essentially
Mm,
see how they maintain these turbines as they generate power. And that was a cool experience because it was very much kind of like pile into a helicopter, go over, ocean waters, and then go into what feels like a very remote area
yeah,
away from
yeah.
human civilization. So,
What's
yeah.
the biggest obstacle? The startup cost on that must be gigantic.
Yeah, they are expensive projects. That's why they probably have to be built at scale at the end of the day. So,
Mm-hmm.
even if you think about California, for instance, like getting up to 25% of the state's power, that's a lot of homes. That's like somewhere in the range of 20 to 25 million homes to be powered
Mm-hmm.
by
Mm-hmm.
potentially, offshore wind. The other thing to think about offshore wind too is like it generates power typically at night when the ocean winds are
Uh,
strongest.
yeah.
So in many ways, it's on, it's about time of
Opposite.
day too. So if you think about
Mm,
solar, that's always strongest when the sun is highest as well. So it's not just
Yeah.
about generating power at one moment of the day. It's hopefully about creating a 24-hour cycle of power that then
Uh,
ideally would be managed by something like battery storage or a better grid.
yeah. Yeah. That's the problem with electricity, right? Because you could just put a million solar panels in the Sahara Desert, but you got to store it or get it
Yeah,
to where it needs to go.
transport.
That's the problem. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Hey, besides, well, let's see. I gotta change these up a little bit. All right. Well, I guess I'll use the same question.
Okay, yeah. Nice.
All right. What's your favorite intersection or neighborhood in San Francisco?
Oh, I'll pick. I think I did the same answer as last time. Divisadero and Page. So I
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
bar, the Page, and then there's a comic book store there. I really enjoy comics experience that I highly recommend to
Mm,
folks as well.
yeah. SF has some cool corners. Like, there's a couple corners where there's a variety of restaurants. You can go left, you can
Yeah,
go right, and you're gonna get something good. There's good
definitely.
people watching. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, San Francisco's gotten a little bit of a bad rap. We're going through a little bit of a hard time, but I drive. So from Daly City, I'll drive Park Presidio and then go around the Doyle Drive in the Golden Gate Bridge. So I drive past Crissy Field, Alcatraz on the way down to Galileo on the waterfront. And as rough as things get, we always have that, man.
It's a
The
beautiful drive. Yeah.
natural beauty.
Yeah.
You can't beat that. The hills. It's just such a beautiful city. I just love it so
Definitely.
much. All right. Hey, and we like to end with our signature question where we ask our guests to choose an infatuation. Infatuation is anyone in the Asian community that you admire. It could be someone you know, could be someone you admire from afar, could be living or deceased. So, Eddie On, who is your infatuation?
I'll pick two, one historical figure, one personal. The
Yeah.
historical figure is Yuri Kochiyama.
Yuri
Always
Kochiyama.
feel like an underappreciated Asian American activist, but recognized in certain circles. And
Mm-hmm.
probably one thing I always want to shout out is she was a person who held Malcolm X's head as he was dying when he was assassinated. And
Yeah.
some films actually choose to leave that out, which I find
Hmm.
frustrating too. But yeah,
Yeah.
so Yuri Kochiyama, shout out. And then the
Mm-hmm.
personal
Mm-hmm.
one is my own mother. I will
Yeah.
say one nice coda to this book that your listeners will appreciate is that she has now read the book 3 times upon its
Mm.
publication, and she's cried on each time, on each reading.
Uh,
And that she enjoys it that much, I think, is in some ways more than I could ever hope for in creating this.
all right. Shout out to Mama An.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, I think that does it for our episode. Those are good picks, by the way. We talked about Yuri. We talked about Yuri Kochiyama for our AAPI history episode.
Very cool.
Apparently she was activist into her 90s. She was in a wheelchair rolling out there and doing things. So,
Holding it
yeah,
down.
very cool pick there. And you can't go wrong picking your mom,
Yeah.
especially in May, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
All right. So I think that does it for our episode. You can get Advocate wherever you get books. You have a favorite local independent bookstore?
Yeah, Comics Experience is a great comic book store. Green Apple
Mm-hmm.
Books is a great
Green
local bookstore.
Apple.
They have several locations throughout the city. It's where the
Yeah.
launch for this graphic memoir was held too, their Sunset
Awesome.
District
Yeah.
location. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
highly
No, they're
recommend them.
great. Yeah, they're great. They're great. We have a lot in San Francisco. We're pretty lucky. We're pretty
Yeah,
spoiled to be able to get
so
some. All right. So as Eddie mentioned, you can follow him at EHA Comics, all one word, on social media, and go check out brightlinedefense.org. They have their own podcast. You can listen to a
yeah,
couple episodes of their podcast. Really well done. I really, I thought the quality was really good on those podcasts.
yeah. All the great work of Aubrey Calloway, Mike Glicksman, even from further back. But yes, it's very polished, and we get to interview some really great, folks who have been doing this work for a long time. So yeah, if you're
Yeah.
interested in environmental justice, highly recommend that your viewers or your listeners go to brightlinedefense.org and click on the podcast link.
Yeah, lots of good stuff on that website too. All right, and as I mentioned, you can always follow us on Infatuasian Podcast over at Instagram or Facebook, or send us a good old-fashioned email with your thoughts or anything you want to, any episode ideas you have for us. Send it over at infatuasianpodcast@gmail.com. So hey, Eddie, thanks again for coming by a second time. I'm glad we met in person, so at least I know.
Yeah,
I like to know what people actually look like, how tall they are, what they're. We got to share a non-alcoholic beer last time. That was kind of nice. Yeah.
Sunny.
I didn't know you were such like we went like next to Jessica's store
Yeah.
is this what's it called, the New Bar, and they have and you were impressed by did you try, what did you try, the whiskey?
I tried the non-alcoholic gin. I'm generally a big drinks person. I've been trying to measure down my actual alcohol intake and replace it with non-alcoholic options, which is why I know so much about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, no. Curtis, it's been awesome getting to know you, and I hope we can hang out more in the future.
Yeah, you know where to find me.
Yeah.
You know where to find me. But yeah, so go check out Jessica's little parklet over on Union Street. Her store is called Nico Nico Gifts. And like I said before, you can reserve that little parklet for your own activity. She has all kinds of stuff. She had free pet portraits. I think it's either tomorrow or last weekend, but by the time this episode airs, it will have gone by. But you could bring your pet down, and a pet artist will draw portraits for you. Wow. She has people do mahjong lessons. They have live music. They had a chocolatier there another week. They had a tea. They had a coffee, a boutique coffee maker. So any creators, not specifically, but especially AAPI creators and artists can use that space. Go on her website, niconicogifts.com, and you can see what's happening on her calendar, but also you could reserve it. So go give Jessica a look over at Nico Nico Gifts. And a real quick note here at the end. I really enjoyed listening to Corner Club perform live when we were on the street at Jessica's place. So I reached out to them, and they're okay with me playing a little bit more of their song here at the end. So this is Manhattan Henge, performed by Corner Club. We'll play this after our outro, so I hope you enjoy that, and go check them out on Instagram or Spotify. But let's see, until we talk to you again, on behalf of Eddie and myself, we hope that you're all happy, healthy, and safe. Oh, and Jessica, we hope that you're all happy, healthy, and safe out there. Until we talk to you again, we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Illuminated by flashing signs, you take my hand and you pull me inside. When did everyone else disappear? Meet me at Manhattan Henge, meet me under Columbus Circle. I'll be waiting there for you.